what's up guys? Quick video blog for you. I got a message earlier this afternoon from Sarah, and she's down in Florida, and it couldn't have come at a more convenient time. Tomorrow's Valentine's Day, and Sarah wants to know all about our heart rates. And she wants to know, what's the importance of knowing our heart rate and how can we utilize this number to help progress our transformation process. And Sarah, that's a great question, and I certainly appreciate the kind words you put in that email, and I'm going to do my best to answer your question and provide you guys with some information that is hopefully beneficial. So let's jump into this, guys. Our heart rate, what's the importance of it? From a health perspective, for an average individual, knowing your heart rate and monitoring your heart rate on a consistent basis is a great habit in terms of checking our overall health. Now, it serves as a means for us to proactively check our state of health. Now, if we know what our resting heart rate is, and we see that there's some consistency month over month or year over year, then we should be alerted when that has a tremendous spike or a tremendous decrease. There's most likely a sign of a health problem there. So knowing our number of our heart rate is extremely important, just in terms of our overall health and our well-being. Now, a healthy heart rate on average falls in between 60 beats per minute to 100 beats per minute. But that doesn't mean that someone with a lower heart rate is, is at risk or is not as healthy. What it means is actually quite the exact opposite. Typically, someone with a heart rate under 60 beats per minute that doesn't have a chronic illness or a doctor-prescribed illness, what that means is that they're in extremely great shape. Okay, they live a healthy, active lifestyle, and what it means is the lower our heart rate is, the less work our heart has to do. Okay, we want our heart to be beating as the least amount of beats per minute as possible in terms of our resting heart rate. Of course, it's going to be spiked when we're doing activity, but overall, on average, our heart rate wants to be low. That's our goal here. To give you guys an example, I have an abnormally low heart rate. Like, it's ridiculously low. And when I go to the doctors just for my normal checkups, they have to check my heart rate and my pulse 1, 2, and 3 times because it's so abnormally low. And for a while, I thought it was something to be concerned about because, my heart rate is anywhere between 38 beats per minute to 42 beats per minute. And, if I sit on a machine and get the pulse reader, it usually indicates that I'm dead. It doesn't even recognize that I'm still alive because it's so low. But, it just turns out that my heart just doesn't work very hard, and that's definitely a positive thing, and it's something that we all kind of want to work towards, is a very low heart rate. But let's jump into this, guys. I took a few notes to help us break down some of the numbers and how we can crunch these numbers and figure out what's best for us. But before I do that, let me mention a few ways we can read our pulse. There's, of course, going to the doctor, and they're going to do their tests and use what I think is called the stethoscope and all those little gadgets that they use. But an easier way is to check the inside of our wrist. We usually just take 2 fingers inside the wrist, cool down your breathing, and you're going to feel the pulse. Another way is right in between your, right in the inside of your elbow, your neck, and even on top of your foot. And then probably the easiest way is to have a heart rate monitor. It goes right across your chest, right under your chest. Or you can use those grips. A lot of the treadmills and ellipticals these days have those metal plates that if you hold, it's going to read your heart rate and your pulse. So utilize that stuff, guys. It's there for a reason. It's there for a reason. It helps indicate where you are in your activity levels. But let's make some sense out of all those numbers that we always see on the treadmills and whatnot. If you guys are one of those individuals going to the gym and want to utilize your heart rate to monitor your performance, this is how we do it. Okay, what we need to do is first understand that by monitoring our heart rate, we can determine what percentile we want to be in. So there's 3 different zones of our max heart rate. Okay, we have our max heart rate, and then we have 3 zones. And there's the recovery zone, which is 60 to 70% of our max heart rate. And then there's the aerobic zone. The aerobic zone is 70 to 80% of our max heart rate. And then there's the anaerobic zone, 80 to 90% of our max heart rate. And these percentiles are great indicators of where we need to be training and how they run parallel to our goals. So if it's let's say it's the 7th day in our split, and it's typically a rest day, but we're feeling extremely sore and fatigued, we feel like we need to flush some lactic acid out. We might do an active recovery day, which is the 60 to 70% of our max heart rate. So we may go to the gym, use light weights, or go on a really nice brisk walk, slow bike ride, and we can know if we're in the recovery zone by monitoring our heart rate and seeing if it is 60 to 70% of our max heart rate. And that is true for the aerobic and the anaerobic. If you're not familiar with what the aerobic and the anaerobic zones are, guys, aerobic is going to be your endurance type of training, okay? It's going to be working on our ability of our muscles and our cardiovascular system to increase its ability to have endurance, okay? The anaerobic zone is our typical lifting. You know, it's not going to be 20-second rest or a continuous stream of activity. It's going to be, you know, bursts of energy, lifting the weight, and then we rest 45 seconds to a minute. And that's just rule of thumb. But that's what this falls into, as well as HIIT training. HIIT training, if you're not familiar, is high-intensity interval training. And I'm not going to dig too deep into it, guys, because I already have a video blog on it, so you can check that out. But HIIT training is, for example, a style of cardio that you can do on the treadmill. And it, you know, a rule of thumb is you might jump on the treadmill 100% effort for 30 seconds. And you jump off. And you rest for a minute and a half, 2 minutes until your heart rate decreases, you catch your breath, you hop back on and repeat it. Repeating these intervals 10 to 12 times, 15 minutes max. That's the anaerobic. The purpose of the anaerobic is to build muscle and to burn fat. Okay, that's the anaerobic zone, 80-90% of our max heart rate. Okay, so once we can decide what zone we want to fall into, whether we want to recover, or we want to build our endurance, or we want to burn fat or build muscle, we can pick one of the 3 zones. Okay, so let's pick the anaerobic zone. That's what most of us are interested in. So 80-90% of our max heart rate, we know that. Okay, boom, we know that, check the box. But we don't know what the actual number is. We don't know what our actual target beats per minute should be in the 80 to 90 percentile until we do a little bit of math and some number crunching. So first we need to figure out what our max heart rate is. And we can do that through several different formulas and equations. And I just picked my favorite one. It's called the Corvonian formula. And what that does is it utilizes a baseline number and it subtracts our age to find our max heart rate. So I'm losing the word. The rule of thumb for this equation is you take 220 minus your age to give you your max heart rate. So if you're 25 years old, you take 220 minus 25 years old gives you 195 beats per minute for your max heart rate. Now, you know, there's going to be a little variation. It might be a little less, might be a little low, but it's a very great general rule of thumb. So 195, okay? Next, we take 195 beats per minute, which is our max heart rate, and we we subtract our HR reserve, okay? And what we do is take that, actually, let me rewind. Okay, so we found our max heart rate. And, you know, 195. So we take our max heart rate and we, what we do is minus our resting heart rate. There's so much to this equation, I'm blanking out here. Max heart rate minus resting heart rate. So as we know, our resting heart rate is when we're sitting on the couch and we can figure it out just by sitting here, calming our breath down. So we take a max heart rate minus our resting heart rate. Okay, that gives us what's called the HR reserve, or our heart rate reserve. Okay. To find our target heart rate for that percentage that we're trying to find, which is the 80-90 percentile for anaerobic, what we do is take our HR reserve, okay, and we multiply it by our training percentage, we'll say 80% of our max, okay, plus our resting heart rate, and that's going to give us our target heart rate for that percentile. Now, I know that was kind of a lot to take in, so I'm going to go through it a little more slowly, and I'm going to give you guys numbers so you can see the correlations in the breakdown. I'm going to have to stare at my computer for this. So let's take, example, a 50-year-old with a resting heart rate of 65 beats per minute who wants to train at 70% of their max heart rate. So what we do is take 220 minus their age of 50, and we get 170 beats per minute for their max heart rate. Okay, then we take their max heart rate minus their resting heart rate, which was 65 beats per minute. Okay, so max minus resting is going to give them 105 beats per minute for their heart rate reserve. Okay, then we take the heart rate reserve multiplied by the percentage that they're trying to hit of their max, which is 70%, and we add their resting heart rate to get our target heart rate for that training percentage of 70%. So in this case, it's 105 beats per minute times 70% plus 139 beats per minute, giving them their overall, their targeted beats per minute for 70% of their max heart rate. Okay, so that's how we can utilize our heart rates in the gym. Now, I know that sounds like a lot, and there's a long equation, a lot of number crunching, and it's not something that you have to do every single time you go to the gym. But if you do it a few times at the different zones, what you'll find is you'll notice your physiology throughout that activity. So when you're doing an active recovery, you're doing the 60 to 70% of your max heart rate, you should begin to recognize your physiology, how your body is, your breathing tempo, your ability to speak, whether it's really fast like this, or if it's like, okay, under breath and you're tired. You'll start to pick up on your overall body language in each one of those zones, and you'll know that, okay, I'm in the ballpark area of where I need to be. I'm in the ballpark area of where I need to be for my endurance. Okay, it's a great way to assess if you're either undertraining or overtraining. Okay, so give this a shot. Do it a few times in each different zone to understand, what it feels like and what your body feels like and how it adapts. And also remember, guys, is the more often we do this and the more often that we train, our heart rate and our overall health and heart health is going to be improving, right? So if, one day your max heart rate is this, as your endurance increases, it may increase. So constantly monitor it, but don't make it a thing or a chore to do every single lift. That's going to be a little overbearing. So break it out, whether it's once a week, once a month, 2-3 times a year, whatever you'd like. Sarah, thanks so much for the email. I appreciate it. Great question. I hope the information helps all of you guys. Until next time, take care, and you guys have a happy Valentine's Day. God bless.